first evening in Rome and my first trip with a video camera. I felt as if I had to tape everything, and almost did. So, if you begin to feel that this presentation goes on too long, be happy that you're not being subjected to the unedited version. Walking back to our hotel after dinner, we happened upon this gathering of young people concertizing on the Spanish Steps.
There is the chicken. Come on, let's go. Chicken. Chicken maschio, chicken male, chicken female. You can do kikiriki. Kikiriki. We find gallo e gallina. That is the gallo. Gallina. Pronto, gallina. Cavallo, cavallo.
Next morning, our plan of exploration again takes us past the Spanish Steps, where we find a fashion shoot in progress. The Spanish Steps date from the early 18th century. They are in the Baroque style, with 137 steps leading from a church at the top to the Piazza di Spagna, or Spanish Plaza, at the bottom. This fountain, in the shape of a boat, sculpted by Bernini, has been here since 1629. On our way to the Colosseum, we pass the huge Victor Emmanuel monument and catch the end of a ceremony honoring the unknown soldier, whose tomb is at the top. The monument symbolizes the uniting of Italy under King Victor Emmanuel. Begun in 1885 and inaugurated in 1911, it is the largest monument in Italy. Begun in 15 AD, during the reign of the Emperor Vespasian, the Colosseum was originally conceived as a 3-story structure, but was heightened to 4 stories by his successor, the Emperor Titus, and opened in the year 80 AD with a spectacular show that lasted 100 days and featured 1,000 gladiators and 5,000 animals. When completed, the Colosseum could accommodate 40 to 50,000 spectators, with the lowest row reserved for the emperor, senators, and Vestal virgins. In modern times, the arena floor has been removed to reveal the extensive substructures which used to house the hoists, cages, mechanisms, and other spaces needed for the elaborate shows and games presented here. Gladiator contests were abolished in 404 AD. Outside the Colosseum, we found many vendors hawking their wares, including this man, selling what I guess we should call balloon pipes. Near the entrance to the Forum, we stopped to see the Arch of Titus, erected to commemorate the capture of Jerusalem in 70 AD. This panel shows Jewish prisoners carrying what I guess is supposed to be a menorah. Built on the site of a drained marsh that later became a marketplace, a meeting place, and the location of the courts of law, the Forum was recast by Julius Caesar and the early emperors. They restored many of the buildings of the old Republic and added new buildings, columns, and triumphal arches, like this one, erected in 203 AD by Septimius Severus to celebrate his victory over the Parthians. These three columns, in the Corinthian style, are all that remains of the Temple of Castor and Pollux, originally built by Julius Caesar in 46 BC. Beyond are the remains of the Temple of Vesta and the House of the Vestal Virgins. After a good night's sleep, we decide to visit the Vatican museums. To get there, we try the Metropolitan or subway. Once we figure out how to buy tickets and point ourselves in the right direction, we're delighted to find that it's a quick, cheap, and easy way to go. The Vatican Museums originated with a group of sculptures placed there by Pope Julius II, the same pope who commissioned the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, which is the primary objective of our visit. However, we know that the place is full of treasures, and since we haven't planned a tour on our own, we hire a guide to make sure we hit at least some of the high spots. After passing through this gallery, we enter the round room of the Pio Clementine Museum, named for Popes Pius VI and Clement XIV, who were its patrons. The big draw here is this sculpture of Laocoon and his sons being killed by serpents. According to Virgil's Aeneid, Laocoon was a Trojan priest who warned against allowing the Trojan horse into the city. Yep, he's the one who told them to beware of Greeks bearing gifts. This advice so pissed off the god who was backing the Greeks, I think it was Poseidon, that he sent poisonous snakes to kill Laocoon and his sons, which event this sculpture, dating from the 1st century BC, depicts. Other sculptures in this area include Hera, Apollo, and the hero Hercules. Many of the mosaics are extraordinarily detailed. Some of the tiles used are so small that it would take 60 of them to equal the size of a fingernail. In the Room of the Muses, the center of attraction is the Belvedere torso, sculpted by Apollonius of Athens in the 1st century BC. The sculptures in this room are supposedly idealized images of a typical Roman family: mother, son, and young daughter. In the Hall of Tapestries, we were particularly impressed by this one, showing Jesus emerging from his tomb. This extravagantly decorated library was presented to the Pope in 1878 by the French government. Around the beginning of the 16th century, Pope Julius II chose 4 rooms as his apartments. He chose Raphael to decorate them. These spectacularly decorated rooms are now known as the Raphael stanzas. Perhaps the most famous fresco is this one, the School of Athens. Symbolic of natural truth, it depicts a large group of wise men from the past in meditation or discourse. Raphael often used images of fellow artists to portray ancient philosophers. Here, Michelangelo represents Heraclitus. Tucked away in a corner is a small self-portrait. This likeness of Leonardo da Vinci represents Plato in conversation with Aristotle. The only thing I can say about the Sistine Chapel is that even a professional videographer, with permission, would be hard put to do it justice. The Borghese Museum was built in the early 1600s by Cardinal Scipione Borghese, an avid art collector. The museum contains several early sculptures by Bernini. This one depicts the abduction of Proserpine by Pluto, god of the underworld. Pluto made her queen of the underworld, but her mother, Ceres, the earth goddess, from whose name we get the word cereal, negotiated a deal with Pluto which allowed Proserpine to spend 6 months of the year above ground. The blossoms of spring herald her return each year. Another masterpiece by Bernini is this image of David in the act of slinging the fatal stone at Goliath. Perhaps the most famous work in the museum, considered a paradigm of the neoclassical style, is Canova's figure of Napoleon Bonaparte's sister Pauline as Venus. On the way back to our hotel, we can't resist stopping for a browse in this toy store. The toys are lovely, but the outrageous prices limit us to just looking. No visit to Rome is complete without a visit to St. Peter's, even if you're not Catholic. The square, designed by the ubiquitous Bernini, is built on the site of Nero's Circus, where many Christian martyrs were put to death at the beginning of the second millennium. The original church was built over St. Peter's tomb at the order of the Emperor Constantine in the 4th century. It was replaced by the present building in the 16th century. The original design was by Bramante, and the work was directed over the years by many artists, including Raphael and finally Michelangelo, who designed the dome. The Swiss Guards are charged with protecting the Pope as well as guarding St. Peter's. Their uniforms date from the Renaissance and bear the colors of the Medici popes. The centrally located papal altar is situated below the dome and is covered by a huge, fantastically decorated canopy designed in the early 17th century, again by Bernini. In front of the altar is the Confessio, below which is located the tomb of St. Peter. For a small extra charge, we are allowed to go up the steps to the gallery around the dome, where we get a great view of the church below and the lavishly decorated interior of the dome above. The views from the top of the dome justify the climb and include the papal gardens, the city, and St. Peter's Square. Even though it's the first thing on your right when you enter, we decided to save this for last. Michelangelo sculpted this at the age of 25, and nothing has surpassed its emotional power since. This late 16th century fountain, created by a man named, appropriately enough, Fontana, is opposite the church of Santa Maria della Vittoria, which houses another Bernini masterpiece. This work, The Ecstasy of Saint Teresa, shows the emotion described by the Spanish nun when, in a religious experience, she felt her body pierced by a golden spear wielded by a holy angel. Nearby, in the Plaza Barberini, I came across this exercise by a class in pantomime. The drunk, I assume, is auditing the class. We're on our way to another picture gallery when this guy stops us and asks for directions. When we tell him we're strangers from LA, he goes into a spiel that almost, I'm embarrassed to say, sucks us in.
For you, I present with my heart I love America, #1 in Los Angeles.
Well, Neil Brad.
Dear Carda, #1.
Shake his hand.
Come here, Papa, come here.
Grazie.
No, come in.
Yeah.
Stuck.
He asks me to turn off the video camera and then tells us he's stuck in Rome and needs gas money to get home. When I ask him how much he needs, he quotes a figure equivalent to more than $50 in US dollars. We give him back his jackets and continue on our way. Another of the must-see sites on our list, probably because it's been featured in a couple of movies, is the Trevi Fountain. How are we to know that it was shut off for restoration? The Church of San Pietro in Vincoli was originally built in the 5th century to house the chains of St. Peter. It was completely rebuilt in the 15th century. These are reputedly the chains that bound St. Peter before his execution in Rome. According to legend, they were broken into 2 parts, one part staying in Rome and the other taken to Constantinople. When the eastern segment was brought back to Rome, the 2 segments were, supposedly, magically linked together again. Only after dropping 200 lira in the slot were we able to light up this fine 7th century mosaic of Saint Sebastian. The funeral monument and tomb of Pope Julius II is where we find the primary purpose of our visit, Michelangelo's famous statue of Moses. Completed in 1515, it depicts Moses as having horns due to a mistranslation from the Hebrew of a word meaning beams of light. This was our last day in Rome. Next, a visit to the Amalfi Coast.